I learned to make myself small long before I understood why. It started in middle school, in the bland corridors of Jefferson Middle in suburban Cleveland, Ohio. The kind of place where gray lockers lined endless hallways, fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, and everyone seemed to know exactly where they belonged, except me. I was 12 when I first realized my voice was a problem. It happened during music class. Mrs. Hendricks, our eternally optimistic choir teacher with her floral dresses and perpetual smile, had asked us to sing individually, just a few bars of America the Beautiful. Simple, safe, or so I thought. When my turn came, I stood up, my hands clammy against the cold metal of my chair. I opened my mouth, and the first notes came out clear and strong, stronger than I'd intended. The melody felt natural, almost effortless, and for a brief, foolish moment, I thought maybe this was something I could be good at. Then I heard the snickering. "Listen to her trying to show off," someone whispered behind me. I recognized the voice. Madison Turner with her perfect blonde ponytail and her army of followers. "She thinks she's on American Idol or something," another voice added. Laughter rippled through the classroom. Mrs. Hendricks tried to intervene. "That was lovely, Emily, really." But the damage was done. I could feel my face burning, my throat closing up. The rest of the song died in my chest, and I sat down as quickly as possible, wishing I could sink through the floor. From that day forward, I learned the art of invisibility. I stopped raising my hand in class. I ate lunch in bathroom stalls or hidden corners of the library. I perfected the ability to move through hallways like a ghost, head down, shoulders hunched, never making eye contact. And I never, ever sang in front of anyone again. High school was worse. The bullying evolved from casual mockery to something more calculated, more cruel. Social media gave them new weapons. Anonymous accounts posted edited photos of me with captions like "wannabe diva" and "theater reject." Someone created a fake Instagram profile called @Emily'sCatVoice, posting daily critiques of imaginary performances I'd never given. My parents noticed, of course. How could they not? My mom, Sarah, worked double shifts as a nurse at Cleveland Clinic. She'd come home exhausted, her scrubs wrinkled, bark circles under her eyes, and still try to talk to me about school. "How was your day, sweetie?" she'd ask, unpacking leftover hospital cafeteria food. "Fine," I'd lie, already halfway up the stairs to my room. My dad, Tom, was a mechanic who ran his own small garage downtown. He was a man of few words, more comfortable with engines than emotions, but I knew he worried. Sometimes I'd catch him watching me with this helpless expression, like he wanted to fix whatever was broken but didn't know where to start. They never understood why I quit choir, why I stopped going to school events, why I spent every evening locked in my room with headphones on, drowning in Spotify playlists and YouTube covers. The truth was, I hadn't stopped singing, I'd just stopped letting anyone hear me. My bedroom became my sanctuary, a small space with faded lavender walls and posters of my favorite artists, Adele, Florence Welch, Aurora. When my parents were asleep and the house was silent, I'd sing softly into my pillow, imagining what it would feel like to perform without fear, without judgment. I recorded myself sometimes on my cracked iPhone 8 just to hear what I actually sounded like. The girl in those recordings didn't sound like the pathetic wannabe my classmates described. She sounded real, raw, emotional. But that girl existed only in private. In public, I was still Emily Hayes, the quiet, forgettable girl who sat in the back row and spoke in whispers. By the time I graduated high school, I'd become so practiced at being invisible that I almost believed I didn't exist at all. Almost.
College was supposed to be different. That's what everyone said, right?
High school doesn't matter. You'll find your people in college. It gets better. I enrolled at Cleveland State University, majoring in English because I didn't know what else to do. My parents couldn't afford to send me away, and honestly, I was relieved. The thought of starting over somewhere completely new terrified me. But Cleveland State was different enough. Bigger, more anonymous. I could disappear into lecture halls with 300 students, never speaking unless absolutely necessary. I lived at home to save money, commuting 40 minutes each way on the RTA bus. The routine was numbing but safe. Wake up, ride the bus, attend classes, ride home, hide in my room, repeat. Until October of my sophomore year. I was walking across campus on a Wednesday afternoon, the autumn air crisp and smelling of fallen leaves. The sky was that particular shade of gray that Cleveland does so well. Not quite raining, but promising to soon. I had my headphones in, listening to a Sarah Bareilles album, when I noticed a crowd gathered near the student center. Curiosity pulled me closer. A bulletin board was covered with bright yellow flyers. Open auditions for spring musical Rent. My heart did something strange in my chest, a flutter, a spike of adrenaline. Rent, one of my favorite musicals. I'd watched the movie version dozens of times, knew every lyric, every emotional beat. I'd imagined myself as Maureen, as Mimi, as anyone who got to stand on a stage and pour their heart out without apology. But that was fantasy. This was real life. You thinking about auditioning? I turned to find a girl standing next to me. She had short, dark hair with purple streaks, multiple piercings, and an easygoing smile that seemed genuinely friendly. "Oh, no, I was just looking," I stammered. "You should totally try out. The theater department here is pretty chill. I'm Riley, by the way, stage manager for most of the productions." She extended her hand and I shook it awkwardly. "Emily." "Well, Emily, auditions are next week. No preparation required. They'll give you sides to read and ask you to sing 16 bars of whatever you want. It's low pressure, I promise." Low pressure. Right. I don't think I'm really... I've never... Riley studied me with perceptive eyes. Let me guess. You love musical theater, but you've convinced yourself you're not good enough to actually do it. The accuracy of her observation stunned me into silence. She laughed gently. "Yeah, I've met 100 people like you. Look, I'm not going to pressure you, but if you decide to show up, I'll be there. Could use someone with fresh energy. The usual crowd is getting kinda stale." She walked away before I could respond, leaving me standing in front of that bulletin board with my heart racing and my mind spinning. I took a picture of the flyer with my phone, just in case. For the next week, that flyer haunted me. I'd pull it up on my phone late at night, reading the details over and over. Monday, October 23rd, 6 p.m., Black Box Theater. No experience necessary. Part of me wanted to go so badly it physically hurt. Another part, the louder, more familiar part, whispered all the reasons I shouldn't. "They'll laugh at you. You're not good enough. Remember what happened last time you tried?" I almost didn't go. The day of the auditions, I went to my morning classes as usual, fully intending to skip the evening session and pretend the flyer never existed. But as I sat on the bus ride home, watching Cleveland's urban landscape blur past the windows, the old brick buildings, the industrial warehouses being converted into trendy lofts, the murals painted on highway overpasses, something shifted inside me. I thought about the girl in those recordings, the one who sang when no one was listening, the one who felt things deeply and expressed them through melody and lyrics. That girl deserved a chance, even if she failed, even if it hurt. I got off the bus one stop early and walked the 3 miles back to campus. By the time I reached the Black Box Theater, my hands were shaking and my heart was pounding so hard I could barely breathe. The building was tucked behind the main theater complex, a small, nondescript structure with black walls and minimal lighting. I stood outside for 10 minutes, watching other students go in. They all looked confident, carrying sheet music, chatting with friends, laughing. I had nothing. No preparation, no sheet music, just a crumpled piece of paper with the audition details, and a lifetime of fear threatening to swallow me whole. You can leave right now. No one would know. No one would care. But I would know. I pushed open the door and stepped inside. The black box theater was smaller than I'd imagined. The space was exactly what its name suggested, a perfect square with matte black walls, black floors, and black ceiling tiles that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Rows of folding chairs created a makeshift audience section, and a simple raised platform served as the performance area. The air smelled of sawdust, fresh paint, and nervous energy. About 15 people were scattered around the room. Some sat in the chairs, scrolling through their phones. Others stood in clusters, warming up their voices with scales and lip trills. A few stretched dramatically, as if preparing for an Olympic event rather than a college theater audition. I immediately felt out of place. Everyone here seemed to know each other, seemed to belong. They wore the unofficial uniform of theater kids: vintage band t-shirts, combat boots, colorful scarves, theatrical makeup. They radiated confidence, or at least a convincing performance of it. I stood by the door in my plain jeans and oversized gray sweatshirt from Target, feeling like an imposter. "Emily, you came!" Riley appeared from a side door, clipboard in hand, grinning like she'd genuinely been hoping to see me. The warmth in her greeting startled me. Yeah, I thought I'd try," I managed. "That's awesome. Okay, so here's how this works. You'll sign in here," she tapped her clipboard, "and then we'll call you up one at a time. You'll do a cold read from the script, then sing 16 bars of whatever song you choose. The creative team is setting up now. Should be ready in about 5 minutes." "What if I don't have sheet music?" The question came out barely above a whisper. "No worries. We have an accompanist, but you can also sing a cappella if you prefer. Lots of people do. Whatever makes you comfortable." Comfortable. As if such a thing were possible right now. I signed my name on her list with shaky handwriting. I was number 12 out of 17. Riley squeezed my shoulder briefly. "You've got this. Just breathe." I found a chair in the back corner and sat down, trying to make myself as small as possible. My mind raced through song options. What should I sing? Something contemporary? A classic musical theater piece? Something that wouldn't make me sound like I was trying too hard? Around me, conversations buzzed. "Did you hear Nathan Morrison is directing this year? Oh my God, really? He's supposed to be intense. I heard he made someone cry during callbacks last semester. He's just serious about the craft, doesn't tolerate mediocrity." My stomach twisted. Nathan Morrison. Even I'd heard of him. A young director who'd graduated from NYU's Tisch School and returned to Cleveland State to teach and direct. He had a reputation for being brilliant but brutal, the kind of person who could spot talent instantly but had no patience for wasted time or half-hearted efforts. The side door opened again, and 3 people entered. The first was a woman in her 50s with wild gray curls and glasses on a beaded chain. Professor Catherine Wells, I'd learned, the theater department head. She carried a warm, maternal energy that immediately put some of the nervous performers at ease. The second was a younger man, maybe late 20s, with headphones around his neck and a casual hoodie, probably the music director or accompanist. The third was Nathan Morrison. He looked exactly like I'd imagined and nothing like it at the same time. Early 30s, tall and lean, with dark hair that looked perpetually disheveled in that intentional way. He wore all black, jeans, t-shirt, blazer, and carried himself with the kind of focused intensity that made the air in the room shift. He didn't smile as he scanned the assembled auditioners. His expression was neutral, assessing, impossible to read. "All right, everyone," Professor Wells called out, her voice warm but commanding attention. "Thank you all for coming. I'm Catherine Wells. This is Nathan Morrison, who will be directing, and Evan Rodriguez, our music director. We're so excited to see what you all bring today." Remember, auditions are about taking risks and showing us who you are. There are no wrong choices, only interesting ones. Nathan didn't offer any encouraging words. He simply sat down in the center chair, crossing his arms, waiting. "Let's get started," he said. His voice was clipped, efficient. "Name?" A confident girl in a vintage leather jacket jumped up. "Alexis Sherman." "Great. Alexis, you'll read Maureen's protest scene from Act 1, then sing for us." And just like that, the auditions began. I watched 11 people go before me. Some were genuinely talented, voices that filled the space with power and emotion, readings that brought the script to life. Others were less polished but enthusiastic, making up for technical shortcomings with raw passion. Nathan's feedback was sparse and surgical. He'd say things like, "Thank you," or "Interesting choice," or occasionally, "Do that again, but forget you're trying to impress anyone." Every now and then I saw a flicker of interest in his eyes, a slight lean forward when someone did something unexpected, but mostly he looked bored, like he'd seen this all before and was waiting for something, anything to surprise him. When they called number 11, my heart started racing in earnest. "Emily Hayes." For a moment, I couldn't move. My legs felt like they'd been filled with concrete. "Emily Hayes?" Riley repeated, scanning the room. I raised my hand weakly and stood, immediately wishing I hadn't. Every eye turned toward me as I walked to the performance area. The distance from my chair to the platform couldn't have been more than 20 feet, but it felt like miles. Nathan looked at me for the first time, really looked. His expression didn't change, but I felt the weight of his assessment, taking in my slouched posture, my oversized clothing, my complete lack of theatrical presentation. "Emily," Professor Wells said kindly, "welcome. What will you be singing for us today?" My mind went blank. I'd spent the last hour trying to decide, running through possibilities, but now every song I had ever known had completely vanished from my memory. My voice came out as barely a whisper. "Speak up, please," Nathan said, not unkindly, but firmly. "The back row needs to hear you." I cleared my throat and tried again, only marginally louder. "I was thinking maybe, She Used to Be Mine, from Waitress?" "Good choice," Evan, the music director, said encouragingly. "Do you have sheet music, or would you like to sing a cappella?" "A cappella is fine." Nathan gestured to the script sides on the table. "First, let's do a cold read. This is Mimi's scene from Act 2, whenever you're ready." I picked up the pages with trembling hands. The words swam before my eyes. I'd seen Rent enough times to know this scene. Mimi, desperate and vulnerable, trying to reconnect with Roger. It required rawness, honesty, need. I took a breath and began to read. My voice was quiet at first, uncertain, but as I continued, something started to happen. The words reached something inside me. All those years of feeling unseen, unheard, desperate to connect, but afraid of rejection. It wasn't acting, it was just truth. By the end of the side, my voice had strengthened slightly, carrying more emotion than I'd intended. The room was silent for a moment. "That was honest," Nathan said, and I couldn't tell if it was a compliment or an observation. "Now sing for us." This was it, the moment I'd been dreading and craving in equal measure. I stood there on that small black platform, acutely aware of every person watching, of Nathan's penetrating gaze, of Riley giving me an encouraging thumbs up from her spot by the door. "This is my voice," I wanted to say. "This is who I am when nobody's watching." But the words wouldn't come. Instead, what came out was little more than a whisper, soft, apologetic, almost pleading. Nathan's expression hardened. "You're lying." The words hit me like a physical blow. I felt my face flush hot, my throat constrict. "Excuse me?" I barely managed. He leaned forward in his chair, his eyes locked on mine. "You're lying. That's not your voice. That's you trying to take up as little space as possible. That's you apologizing for existing before you've even started. So either show us who you actually are or stop wasting everyone's time." The room went completely silent. I could feel every person present holding their breath, watching this moment unfold. Something inside me cracked. All those years of making myself small, all those hours of singing alone in my room, convinced I wasn't good enough to be heard, all the bullying, the mockery, the carefully constructed walls I'd built around myself. In that moment, I had a choice. I could run, leave the theater, leave the audition, leave this dream buried forever. Or I could prove him wrong. I closed my eyes, and I sang. The first note came from somewhere deep inside my chest, a place I'd kept locked for years. It's not simple to say that most days I don't recognize me. The melody of "She Used to Be Mine" poured out of me, and with it, everything I'd been holding back. The song was about loss, about recognizing that somewhere along the way, you'd lost yourself, buried who you really were under layers of fear and compromise and self-protection. It was my story. My voice filled the black box theater in a way that surprised even me. It wasn't perfect. There were rough edges, moments where emotion overtook technique, but it was real, raw, unfiltered. Who'll be reckless just enough, who'll get hurt, but who learns how to toughen up. I wasn't singing for them anymore. I was singing for 12-year-old Emily, standing in front of her middle school class, voice cracking under the weight of their judgment, for the girl who ate lunch in bathroom stalls, for every night I spent alone in my room, convinced my voice didn't matter. "She is messy, but she's kind. She is lonely most of the time." My eyes were still closed, but I could feel the room's energy shift. The air itself seemed to change, becoming heavier, more charged. I could sense people leaning forward, holding their breath. "She is gone, but she used to be mine." The final notes hung in the air for a moment after I finished. I kept my eyes closed, afraid to open them, afraid to see Nathan's dismissive expression or the other auditioners' barely concealed mockery. The silence stretched. Then someone started clapping. I opened my eyes to see Professor Wells standing, her hands coming together in slow, deliberate applause, tears visible behind her glasses. Evan joined her, then Riley, then others scattered throughout the room. But it was Nathan's face that stopped me cold. He wasn't clapping. He was staring at me with an expression I couldn't quite read, something between shock and recognition, like he'd just witnessed something he hadn't expected to see. "That," he said quietly, his voice carrying despite its low volume, "was your voice." I nodded, unable to speak, my entire body trembling with adrenaline and released emotion. "Why did you hide it?" he asked. It wasn't an accusation. It sounded like genuine curiosity. "Because," I started, then stopped. How could I explain years of trauma in a single sentence? "Because every time I tried to be heard, I got hurt." The honesty of my response seemed to land with him. He nodded slowly, making a note on his clipboard. "Thank you, Emily. We'll post callbacks tomorrow." I walked back to my chair on shaky legs, barely processing what had just happened. The remaining auditions continued, but I couldn't focus on them. My mind was reeling, my body still vibrating with the aftershocks of vulnerability. When the auditions finally ended, I tried to slip out quickly, but Riley caught me by the door. Holy shit, Emily, she breathed, her eyes wide. Where did that come from? I don't know, I admitted. I couldn't not sing. Does that make sense? Perfect sense. She glanced back toward where Nathan was conferring with Professor Wells and Evan. I've worked with Nathan for 2 years, and I've never seen him look at someone like that. Whatever you did in there, it got through to him, and that's not easy. He was pretty harsh, I said, feeling defensive, telling me I was lying. That's Nathan. He pushes people because he knows when they're holding back. He did the same thing to me when I first started working with him, called me out for playing it safe, for managing the production from a distance instead of actually engaging with the art. I hated him for about a week. She grinned. Then I realized he was right. I wasn't sure how I felt about Nathan Morrison yet. Part of me was still angry at being called a liar in front of everyone, but another part, a quieter, more honest part, knew he'd been right. Do you really think I might get a call back? I asked hesitantly. Riley gave me a look that was half exasperation, half affection. Emily, you made Catherine Wells cry. Evan was literally mouthing "wow" to me during your song, and Nathan actually looked interested instead of bored out of his mind. Yes, you're definitely getting a call back. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in my bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment of the audition, the terror, the anger, the crack that opened inside me when Nathan said I was lying, the way the song had poured out, unbidden and unstoppable. Who was that girl who sang? She didn't feel like me, shy, quiet, forgettable Emily. She felt like someone I'd been suppressing, someone who'd been trying to break free for years. My phone buzzed with a text from Riley at 2 a.m. Callback list is up. Go check, now. My hands shook as I opened my laptop and navigated to the theater department website. There it was, a PDF labeled Rent Callback List. I read through the names, my heart pounding. Emily Hayes, callbacks for Mimi and Maureen. I read it 3 times to make sure it was real. Then I cried. Not sad tears, something else. Relief, maybe. Or disbelief. Or the overwhelming weight of possibility. Callbacks were scheduled for Thursday evening, giving me 2 days to prepare. The email instructed those called back to prepare 1 up-tempo song and 1 ballad, ready to perform selected scenes with scene partners. I spent every free moment practicing. Between classes, I'd find empty stairwells or practice rooms to run through songs. I checked out the Rent script from the library and studied Mimi's character until I could recite her lines from memory. My parents noticed the shift in me. You seem different, my mom said over dinner Wednesday night. She'd made spaghetti, one of the few meals she actually had time to cook from scratch. Different how? I asked, twirling pasta on my fork. More present, I guess, like you're actually here instead of just going through the motions. She exchanged a glance with my dad. Did something happen? I hadn't told them about the audition, partly because I didn't want to jinx it, partly because I didn't know how to explain it without explaining everything. The years of hiding, the bullying, the fear. I auditioned for a musical, I said quietly, at school, and I got called back. My dad looked up from his plate, surprise evident on his weathered face. A musical? I didn't know you were interested in that kind of thing. I've always been interested. I haven't really told anyone. My mom's eyes softened with understanding, and maybe a hint of guilt for not knowing this about her own daughter. What's the show? Rent. It's about artists struggling in New York City. It's really powerful. I'd love to see you perform, she said, reaching across the table to squeeze my hand. If you get cast. If I get cast, I echoed, not wanting to hope too hard. But deep down, something had shifted. For the first time in years, I wanted something. Not just passively wished for it, but actively, desperately wanted it. And that wanting felt dangerous and exhilarating in equal measure. Thursday arrived too quickly and not quickly enough. I showed up to the callback session 30 minutes early, dressed with slightly more intention this time. Black jeans, a fitted dark green shirt, my hair pulled back. Not quite theater kid chic, but closer than before. The Black Box Theater was busier than it had been for regular auditions. About 10 people had been called back, all of them looking various degrees of nervous and excited. I recognized Alexis, the confident girl from before, warming up her voice in a corner. A tall guy with an impressive vocal range ran through scales nearby. Nathan and the creative team sat in the same configuration as before, but this time there was an additional person, a woman with a camera, documenting the process. "All right, everyone," Nathan called out once we'd all gathered. "Thank you for coming back. Today we're going to work through some scenes and songs, exploring chemistry, range, and how you take direction. This is a collaborative process. I need actors who can be vulnerable, who can take risks, who aren't afraid to fail in pursuit of something real." His eyes swept across the room and landed on me for a brief moment. I couldn't read his expression. "Let's start with the light my candle scene. Emily and Marcus, you're up first." My stomach dropped. Marcus was the tall guy with the great voice. He was clearly being considered for Roger, which meant I was about to perform one of the most intimate, sexually charged scenes in the musical with a complete stranger while Nathan Morrison watched and judged. Perfect. Marcus turned out to be surprisingly kind. As we stood together on the platform, looking over the script pages, he whispered, "Don't worry. I'm way more nervous than I look. Just play with me, okay? React honestly." The scene began. Mimi searching for a light for her candle in Roger's dark apartment. The flirtation, the attraction, the vulnerability underneath the confidence. I'd spent 2 days preparing, but nothing prepared me for Nathan's interruptions. "Stop," he called out 30 seconds in. "Emily, you're indicating. You're showing me what you think the moment should look like instead of actually experiencing it." Again, from the top. We started over. This time I tried to relax, to actually listen to Marcus instead of worrying about how I looked. "Better," Nathan said, "but you're still apologizing with your body. Mimi doesn't apologize. She's been beaten down by life, but in this moment, she's trying to connect. There's hunger there. Desperation." Again, we ran the scene 4 more times. Each iteration, Nathan pushed me to commit more fully, to stop protecting myself, to let the messiness show. By the final run, I was exhausted, but something had broken open. The scene felt real, awkward and electric and raw. "Good," Nathan said, making notes. "Now sing Out Tonight." Out Tonight. Mimi's rock anthem, her declaration of needing to escape, to feel alive, to be seen. It required power and attitude I wasn't sure I possessed, but I had learned something during those repeated scene runs. Nathan didn't want polish, he wanted truth. So I sang it like a woman desperate to break free. I sang it like every night I'd spent trapped in my room, aching to be someone different. I sang it with all the anger and hunger and longing I'd been suppressing for years. When I finished, Nathan was scribbling furiously on his clipboard. Professor Wells was grinning. Evan gave me a subtle nod of approval. "Thank you, Emily," Nathan said. "Take a seat." The rest of the callbacks proceeded in a similar fashion. Nathan pushed everyone, broke down their defenses, demanded more than they thought they could give. Some people rose to the challenge, others crumbled under the pressure. By the end of the evening, I was emotionally wrung out, but also strangely energized. I'd never worked like this before, never been challenged to dig deeper, to risk more, to stop hiding. As people filtered out, Nathan called my name. "Emily? Can you hang back for a minute?" My heart jumped into my throat. Riley shot me an encouraging look as she left with the others, leaving me alone with Nathan and Professor Wells. Nathan studied me for a long moment, his arms crossed, that intense gaze making me want to squirm. "You're talented," he said finally, "more than you know, but you're also terrified, and that's going to be a problem. I can work on that, I stammered. It's not something you work on, it's something you decide. He leaned forward, his expression serious. If I cast you in this production, I need you to show up fully, not the Emily who whispers and hunches her shoulders and tries to disappear, the one who sang in that audition, the one who broke open in callbacks today. Can you do that? It was the same question I'd been asking myself. Could I? Could I sustain that level of vulnerability night after night in front of audiences? Could I let people see me, really see me, after spending years learning to hide? I don't know, I admitted, but I want to try. Something shifted in Nathan's expression, not quite a smile, but a softening. That's the most honest answer anyone's given me all week. He glanced at Professor Wells, who nodded. We'll post the cast list tomorrow, but Emily, he waited until I met his eyes. Whatever happens, you should keep singing. Don't hide that voice again. The cast list went up at 3 p.m. on Friday. I'd been refreshing the theater department website every 5 minutes since noon, my stomach in knots. Riley had texted me earlier, "Stop torturing yourself. The list goes up when it goes up." Also, Nathan doesn't post early for anyone. But I couldn't help it. The waiting was excruciating. When the PDF finally appeared on the page, I was sitting in the library, supposedly studying for a British literature exam. My hands trembled so badly I could barely click the link. The cast list loaded. Rent, Spring 2024 production, cast. Roger Davis, Marcus Chen, Mark Cohen, David Martinez, Maureen Johnson, Alexis Sherman, Joanne Jefferson, Taylor Williams, Angel Dumont Chenard, Jordan Casey, Tom Collins, Isaiah Thompson, Benny Coffin, Ryan Park, Mimi Marquez, Emily Hayes. I read my name 3 times. Then I read it again. Mimi Marquez, Emily Hayes. I'd gotten the lead. Not just a role, not just a callback, but the lead. I sat there in the library, surrounded by students typing on laptops and whispering about their coursework, and I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Pride. Pure, uncomplicated pride in myself. My phone exploded with texts. Riley, told you, welcome to the cast, Mimi. Marcus, congrats, can't wait to work with you properly. Unknown number. This is Nathan, first rehearsal Monday at 6. Come prepared to work. And congratulations, you earned this. I screenshotted the cast list and sent it to my parents with a simple message. I got the lead role. My mom called immediately, her voice thick with emotion. Oh, sweetie, I'm so proud of you. I want to hear everything. For once, I wanted to tell her everything. That weekend, I let myself feel the full weight of what had happened. I'd done something I'd been convinced was impossible. I'd let people hear my voice, my real voice, and they hadn't mocked me. They'd cast me, chosen me. But beneath the excitement, fear lurked. What if I couldn't sustain it? What if the audition was a fluke and I reverted back to quiet, scared Emily the moment rehearsals started? What if I disappointed Nathan, or let down my castmates, or froze in front of an actual audience? Sunday evening, I found myself in front of my bedroom mirror, trying to see what they saw. The girl staring back still looked like me, thin, pale, unremarkable. But maybe there was something different in her eyes, a spark that hadn't been there before. My phone rang. Riley. Hey, are you freaking out yet? How did you know? I asked, sinking onto my bed. Because everyone freaks out after getting cast. It's like you work so hard to get the part, and then you get it, and suddenly you're like, oh shit, now I actually have to do this thing. Exactly, I breathed, relieved she understood. Look, I've stage managed enough productions to know something about you already, Riley said.
You wouldn't have gotten this part if Nathan didn't believe you could handle it. He doesn't cast people to set them up for failure. He casts people he thinks can surprise him. So yeah, it's going to be hard. Nathan's going to push you. You're going to have moments where you want to quit, but you can do this. How do you know? Because I saw you sing. Everyone did. That wasn't a fluke, Emily. That was you finally letting yourself be seen. The first rehearsal was exactly as intense as I'd anticipated.
We gathered in the Black Box Theater on Monday evening. 11 actors, Nathan, Professor Wells, Evan, Riley, and a few other crew members. The space had been reconfigured with folding tables arranged in a square, creating an intimate working environment. Nathan started with what he called table work, reading through the entire script, discussing character motivations, historical context, themes. Rent is about people living with HIV/AIDS during the crisis of the early 1990s, he explained, his voice passionate. It's about artists trying to create in the face of poverty and disease. It's about found family, about measuring your life in love. These aren't abstract concepts. These were real people dying, really being ignored by their government, really fighting to be seen as human. He looked around the table. I don't want a sanitized version of this show. I want it to hurt. I want it to be uncomfortable. I want audiences to leave feeling something, even if that feeling is grief or anger or confusion. Can you do that? We all nodded, but I wondered if any of us truly understood what he was asking. Over the next few weeks, I learned. Rehearsals were grueling. Nathan worked us 6 days a week, 3 to 4 hours each evening. He'd stop scenes constantly, questioning choices, pushing us to go deeper, to strip away performance and find raw truth. "You're acting Mimi's drug addiction," he told me one night, frustration evident in his voice. "I need you to understand what it feels like to need something so badly you'd destroy yourself to get it. What do you need like that, Emily? What would you do anything for?" The question rattled me for days. But slowly, something began to shift. The more Nathan pushed, the more I found myself capable of. The more he refused to let me hide, the less I wanted to. My castmates became allies in this process. Marcus and I developed an easy chemistry, finding the complicated love between Roger and Mimi. Alexis taught me how to loosen up, to take up space on stage. Jordan, who played Angel, showed me how to find joy even in tragic circumstances. "Mimi isn't just a victim," Jordan explained one night during a break. "She's fighting for life. Even when she's at her lowest, there's this spark in her that refuses to give up. That's what makes her beautiful. That's what Roger sees." Outside rehearsals, my life began to transform in small ways. I spoke up more in my classes, made eye contact with classmates, accepted an invitation to get coffee with some people from the cast, started dressing with more intention, not hiding behind oversized sweatshirts. It wasn't a complete transformation. I still had anxious days, moments where the old fears crept back in, but I was learning that being visible didn't mean being destroyed. My parents came to watch a rehearsal in late November. Afterward, my dad pulled me aside, his eyes red. "I didn't know," he said quietly. "All these years, I didn't know you had this inside you." "I didn't either," I admitted. "Your mother and we knew you were struggling in school. We saw you pulling away. We just didn't know how to reach you." He cleared his throat. "I'm sorry we didn't try harder." "You couldn't have," I said honestly. "I had to find my own way here." As opening night approached, my anxiety peaked. We'd done a full run-through the week before, and while it hadn't been perfect, it had been powerful. Nathan had actually given us a compliment. That was almost good enough, which, coming from him, was high praise. But performing for the crew and director was different from performing for hundreds of strangers. The night before opening, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed running through lyrics and blocking and character choices, my mind spinning with what-ifs. My phone buzzed at 1 a.m. "Nathan. Can't sleep either, I'm guessing. Come to the theater if you're awake. Side doors open."
I shouldn't have gone. It was late, I needed rest. It probably wasn't appropriate for a student to meet their director alone in the middle of the night, but I went anyway. The black box theater was dim, lit only by a few work lights. Nathan sat in the front row, wearing sweatpants and a worn t-shirt, looking more human than I'd ever seen him. "Couldn't turn your brain off?" he asked as I approached. "Something like that." He gestured to the seat next to him, and I sat. For a moment, we both just stared at the empty stage. "I'm terrified," I admitted. "What if I freeze? What if I forget lyrics? What if I'm only good in rehearsals and completely fall apart with an actual audience?"
"You probably will mess up," Nathan said, which was not reassuring. "You'll probably forget a line or miss a cue or crack on a high note. Everyone does. But that's not what I'm worried about." "What are you worried about?" He turned to look at me, his expression serious. "I'm worried you'll get out there and decide it's safer to hide again, that you'll give them a performance instead of the truth." I thought performance was the point. No, connection is the point. The audience doesn't need perfect, they need honest. They need to see themselves in you, in your struggle, your vulnerability, your refusal to give up even when everything's falling apart. He leaned back in his seat. "You want to know why I was so harsh in your audition? Why I said you were lying?" I nodded. "Because I saw myself. 10 years ago, at my Juilliard audition, playing it safe, trying to be what I thought they wanted instead of who I actually was. I got rejected. It took me years to figure out that talent without courage is useless. You have the talent, Emily, but you keep trying to apologize for it." The honesty in his voice surprised me. "How did you stop apologizing?" I asked. "I haven't, entirely. It's a practice, not a destination. But I started by making a choice. I decided that if I was going to fail, I'd fail being honest instead of fail being safe. At least then the failure would mean something." We sat in comfortable silence for a while, the theater holding us in its darkness. "You're going to be great tomorrow," Nathan said, finally. "Not because you won't make mistakes, but because you've learned how to be brave. That's rarer than you think." Opening night. The dressing room buzzed with nervous energy as we applied makeup and got into costume. My Mimi outfit, ripped tights, leather jacket, tank top, made me feel both exposed and powerful. Riley stuck her head in. 5 minutes to places. My castmates gathered in a circle, holding hands. This had become our pre-show ritual, a moment of collective breathing and intention. "Whatever happens out there," Marcus said, "we're in this together. Let's tell this story like it matters." "Because it does," Alexis added. We broke the circle with a cheer that was half nerves, half excitement. I walked to my backstage entrance, my heart hammering. Through the curtain, I could hear the audience filling the seats, hundreds of voices, hundreds of people who'd come to watch us bare our souls for 2 hours. The house lights dimmed. The opening music began, and then it was time. I can't tell you every detail of that performance. Much of it exists in my memory as sensation rather than specific moments. The heat of the stage lights, the weight of the costume, the feeling of Marcus's hand in mine during our scenes. But I remember the important parts. I remember stepping into my first scene, my first lines, and feeling the fear rise up, and then letting it fuel me instead of paralyze me. I remember singing Out Tonight and seeing people in the front row singing along under their breath. I remember the hush that fell over the audience during Without You, that moment of collective breath holding where you can feel everyone leaning in, feeling the weight of loss. I remember the final scene, Mimi's near death and revival, and letting myself fully embody that desperation, that clinging to life. I remember Marcus's real tears as he held me, and knowing we'd found something authentic. And I remember the final note of Finale B, the entire cast singing together. There's only us. There's only this. Forget regret, or life is yours to miss. No other path, no other way, no day but today. The lights went down. For a heartbeat, silence. Then the audience erupted. The applause was thunderous, physical. As we took our bows, I saw people standing, crying, cheering. I saw my parents in the third row, my mom openly weeping, my dad clapping so hard his hands must have hurt. I saw Nathan in the back, arms crossed, but with something on his face that might have been pride. When I stepped forward for my individual bow, the cheers intensified. Someone shouted, "Brava!" I felt tears streaming down my face, but I wasn't embarrassed. I was just grateful. We'd done it. I'd done it. I'd let myself be heard. The show ran for 2 weekends, 8 performances total. Each one was different. Some nights were stronger technically, others more emotionally raw. But every single performance, I showed up fully. No hiding, no apologizing. The reviews from the student newspaper were glowing. One critic wrote, "Emily Hayes' Mimi is a revelation, vulnerable without being weak, sexy without being exploitative, desperate without being pathetic. She makes you believe every moment, feel every loss." But the review that mattered most came during closing night. Nathan pulled me aside after the final performance, after the strike crew had started dismantling the set, after most of the cast had gone to the after-party. "You did something I don't see often," he said. "You transformed, not just as a performer, as a person. That first audition, you could barely speak above a whisper. Tonight, you commanded that stage. You know what changed?" I shook my head. "You stopped asking permission to exist. You stopped waiting for someone to validate you before taking up space. That's not something I taught you. That's something you chose." He handed me an envelope. "There's a summer intensive program at Steppenwolf in Chicago. They're looking for young performers interested in devised theater and authentic storytelling. I wrote you a recommendation. I think you should apply." I stared at the envelope, stunned. I don't know if I'm ready for that." "You're not," he agreed, "but you will be, and the only way to get ready is to keep choosing courage over comfort." 3 months later, I got accepted to the Steppenwolf program. 6 months after that, I auditioned for and got into a theater conservatory in New York. A year after that first audition, I was living in a tiny apartment in Brooklyn, studying under master teachers, performing in showcases, building a life I'd once thought was impossible. But none of that is really the point. The point is the moment in that audition when Nathan said, "You're lying," and I had a choice. I could have run. I could have stayed safe in my silence. Instead, I sang. And in singing, really singing, with my whole voice and whole heart, I found something I'd lost. Myself. I still have bad days, days when the old fears creep back, when I want to make myself small again, but now I have proof that there's another option. I've felt what it's like to be fully present, fully seen, fully alive. I think about that scared girl who walked into the Black Box Theater with nothing but a crumpled flyer and a lifetime of fear. I want to tell her, it's going to hurt. Opening yourself up, letting people see you, it's going to be uncomfortable and scary, and sometimes you'll want to quit. But on the other side of that fear is a life worth living, a voice worth hearing. Your voice. So when someone tells you you're lying, when the world tries to convince you to stay small, when fear whispers that it's safer to hide, sing anyway. Sing like your life depends on it, because in a way, it does.